a little bit earlier. I know some may be watching this throughout the course of the holiday weekend, recording on a Tuesday, so no fallout reaction from Full Gear on Wednesday night's Dynamite, but plenty still to get into. With me, as always, from ESPN West Palm, we have Brian Rowitz, and catch him on ESPN on 1000. Jonathan Hood, I'm Gabe Neitzel from ESPN Milwaukee. So we begin with AEW after they put on their 8th pay-per-view of the year. Full Gear was this past weekend. It's a simple question, simple place to start today, boys. What grade do you give Full Gear?
It was a solid B for me, and the reason why it was elevated is because of the greatest death match I've ever seen on pay-per-view. That's the reason why, because otherwise it felt like a one-match card, and that would be the main event to me, Gabe, with MJF trying to recapture his championship that's been stolen away from him from Jay White. Thank God for the death match, because all the other matches were good. It's not like they were bad, but I just think that the stakes were huge. And we had a special, by the way. It's available now in the archives. It's on YouTube and also in our podcast. We did a special Saturday night show talking about this, Browitz, and that death match, I think, elevated that card, because we've seen these in the indies. You might see these on YouTube or, behind some paywall, but nothing like what we saw there. I think it's a solid B. It elevated the entire card, something we've never seen before on pay-per-view.
Yeah, I completely agree with all of that assessment. I think it's one of those things, if you step back and look at this card without Hangman versus Swerve, you're looking at it saying, like, all right, it was a Dynamite. Like, the main event, to me, left a lot to be desired. Like, it was a good match, but it was a WWS match, and I wish there was more of the devil stuff and some of the other further storylines. But there really wasn't much else besides that match. But that match was so damn good that it took it over the edge, and that's why I give it a B also, because that is a match that is in contention right now for Match of the Year.
I mean, I thought it was a little bit higher. I'm surprised, you guys, because I thought they did. The build of Orange Cassidy versus Moxley and the whole BCC thing. Like, yes, that's earlier in the card, and maybe you forget about it a little bit. Obviously, Christian Cage has been doing some great work. I thought the ladder match was a lot of fun. In the tag match, like, everything else kind of got lost in the shuffle because of how good the death match was. But like, I thought that the Young Bucks and Jericho and Omega were put in the impossible spot of going on after that. And they found a way. I mean, they didn't match it because it was impossible to match whatever that was. But they kept the crowd energy going. It's not like everybody was just down on their feet and exhausted, which can happen with AEW shows. Like, I have being present for their 4-hour-long pay-per-views, and that's just the main card. That doesn't include the hour 0 hour that they did with 3 other matches. I'm talking about just the 4-hour main card. When you're there, sometimes you're just going, man, I'm just out of energy before you get to the end of the show. And I thought the way that they were able to kind of deliver with those 2 matches after that, I thought they were able to keep the energy up. I don't think this was like an A and just like their best one of the year, but I would at least upgrade it to a B+. I thought it was a really good card with a lot of really good matches. Of course, the one shining thing that you're going to take out of it and remember next year, certainly, and the year after, was the best death match that they've done, which probably wasn't a super high bar to climb. Like, they've done some pretty good ones, but I feel like their death matches, you remember more of the ones that fallen flat on their face, like the one with Mox where Eddie Kingston's protecting him from an explosion that just never comes.
Yeah.
And you had the failed pyro there, but this helps kind of erase some of those memories that you have of some of those past death matches, because this hit the tone that you were looking for it to hit, being as personal as they made it.
Yeah, but some of the matches you mentioned, so like Mox and Orange was good, but it wasn't as good as the first time. Like, that main event they had it all out, like, that was one hell of a match, and it was good, but it wasn't that great. The ladder match was, yes, it was a good match, but also, like, what story did you have? It was one of those matches that going in, you're like, who's in this match again? Like, you forget what's actually happening, and then all the guys sort of doing their things. And even the 6-man open, like, yes, it was cool to see Sting and Copeland and Darby yelling and reprimanding the audience for not being loud enough, I guess. But, like, that's a Dynamite main event. Like, that was the thing where it's like, it was good, but it wasn't outstanding, which we've been used to with AEW.
Did I hear correctly? Did Excalibur just drop it in that after that match, Darby Allin was catching a red eye to climb Everest?
Yes. Now, is that happening this week?
I mean, now, don't you have to train for that? Isn't that something like, I don't think, from my understanding, this is a rather dangerous endeavor. Now,
Is it?
yeah, from my understanding, again, I've never done it personally. I've just heard stories. Jumping on a red eye after wrestling in a match, I don't think that's the way you want to go into climbing Everest, but I could be wrong.
But what do you know? You've never done it before.
Yeah, that's true. That's what I'm just saying.
And I also say this, that if he falls, he'll be back at Dynamite the next week. He'll be fine.
Oh, of course.
Because he's a rubber
figuring
ball.
out how to work a match up there.
Yeah, he's a rubber ball, so it's okay. He's actually a cat. He's not even a human being. He could fall off of Mount Everest and will be there for the next Dynamite. It'll be fine.
He's landing on all fours.
Quote, I believe it's from Sports Illustrated. It's all that's floating around Twitter. This is from Darby. Quote, I really believe with everything that I've done and that I continue to do for my body, I'm going to feel great for a long time. Unless I die on Mount Everest.
Oh,
so, you know, he worked in that caveat.
Yeah, no problem.
Just in case, just wants to make sure that he works that in there.
But besides that, he feels great.
I think that the overall show, though, guys, I mean, it's a solid B for me only because, I mean, what we got is that the women's championships, they got it right. Yep. They gave us exactly what we want. We got Toni Storm as one champion, and we've got Julia Hart as the other champion. So they got that part of it right. It's what the fans have wanted. The fans have been behind Julia Hart. They've been behind this new Toni Storm is timeless Toni Storm, so it works out. But I just think that a lot of these matches, like for instance, you talked about Omega and Jericho against the Young Bucks. Again, we have never seen Omega and Jericho tag before. It was cool, but I was distracted still. I'm watching that match and I'm like, I know this is like 4 stars, Meltzer, but like, is Swerve okay? I'm there. I'm watching it. I mean, it's not like I'm not engaged, but I'm just kind of, my mind was wandering of like, is Adam Page okay? Did they take him to the hospital? And like, how many staples did Strickland take? And that I couldn't shake it. I could not, because that's what I was thinking about. So that's why it makes it a B, because that match was so overwhelming and so good that everything else fell in comparison.
Is there somebody backstage that's counting the staples so they know how many they have to take out? Or is just Swerve in the shower kind of lathering up and goes, oh crap, here's one, and has to like take it out himself? Like that was a legitimate thought that was happening in my mind during that match.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess that's sort of nature of the beast with those guys. And the Swerve promo after, but like that was one of those things that was worth the pay-per-view, just sort of the blow off. Like the story led to that match. That match paid off that story. Like that was what a pay-per-view match was supposed to be like. And
they got it right. I mean, you just talked about getting the women's matches right in the winner. I believe they got look, I understand that there were probably a lot of fans out there that wanted Hangman to get his revenge for a man who stood over his son's crib and talked trash, right? Like he crossed the line. However, this is more, I mean, we talked about it last week. I think it was more important for Swerve to win so he can go on to bigger and better things. And I think ultimately they got the winner right with Swerve.
Don't you guys think it's weird that there was no baby face in this and no heel? I mean, this guy broke into Page's crib, broke into his house, looked into his baby's crib. That's a heel.
Yeah,
but yet, because you got a Prince Nana who is very, very popular, Strickland gets cheers. Okay, and then with Paige on the other side, you heard some boos for Paige. It was just a weird dynamic. And by the way, as you two know, I'm a traditional wrestling fan. I'm not necessarily a deathmatch guy, but I'm just was so into the spectacle of this, where the crowd was not groaning, but they were just like silent, trying to figure out, well, what's next? And they were popping for all the moves. It's like, how could you not watch this and say, wow, that's amazing?
I will say though, why still after all that does the table spot get such a bump? Or such a pop? They pull out the table and everyone goes nuts. It's like, have you seen the other stuff they've been doing? Like, I don't understand that logic ever.
That's the WWE and the wrestling fan that just thinks the Dudley spot is the spot. Of course, they also were chanting for fire as well, Los Angeles.
Okay, so,
so you heard that, right? We want fire. We heard that too. So I put the opponent through the table with fire. Now, what else do you want? Want me to kill him? Want me to impale him? Seriously,
they want more Nana dancing. That's the balance there. That offsets it.
How crazy is it that Nana's so over that he's the only one who gets a special entrance at the pay-per-view? Right. Like they hire the dancers and like just crazy.
That was the same match. Like that's insane to put those two next to each other.
Well, I guess they did have like the kids choir that sung Christian Cage to the ring, which was
Dad of the Year.
Yeah, I mean, again, making sure it was like a kid's choir. Like, that's just a little tiny detail, just a little minor detail that you absolutely nailed when you decided to do Christian's entrance like that.
Yes,
But Christian and Nana, those were the two that got the special entrances.
and because of Christian, thank you very much, Nigel McGuinness, for your 1980s heel commentary.
Yeah.
Over the top. Jesus, could you just slow it down a little bit? I know you're trying to get Christian over, but he doesn't need your commentary. He's already over. Thanks. He's already over.
Fair.
Holy cow. But I love that children's choir. That is exactly what you want right there, right? And again, those little things are over. That's the details that we used to criticize AEW about, and they're nailing it as of late.
And even the little adjectives in his entrance, like instead of just being the random countdown now, you had the adjectives describing him, like that added to it as well.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It just somehow Christian Cage is having the run of his career.
Yeah.
So what was the miss? If we liked the Texas death match, I don't even know why they put Texas on it. It was just a death match. You don't have to put Texas on there. It was in Los Angeles. Okay, so what was the miss? Because, one of my matches of the week, I'll give you a spoiler, wasn't even on the pay-per-view. It was in the 0 hour. Okay, so, what was the miss on this show?
To me, it was just that everything was good, not great. Like, it was almost AEW's fault. Like, we've gotten so accustomed to every match being 5 to 6 stars that when you get a bunch of 3-4 stars, it's like, oh, that's not as good.
Yeah, even on the pre-show, they gave everything. The shortest match of all of them was the MJF Samoa Joe tag match. That was the only match that was under 10 minutes. Like, they gave everything time. And again, that's where AEW and WWE kind of differ. And I'm sure we'll get into this when we start talking about Survivor Series, because right now we only have 5 matches at Survivor Series, granted 2 of them being War Games matches, which are going to be longer just by the way that those matches work. But WWE, especially under Hunter, they've been trying to keep that to a pretty tight 2.5 to 3 hours. And they don't want to go much longer than that on their premium live events, where Tony's going to give you the full 4 hours. And MJF pointed this out during the press conference, which was a really weird press conference, by the way. But like the thing that AEW does, and I think the thing that they need to keep leaning into, is that they can do so many different things with their roster. With the WWE, even when they put on good matches, like there's a WWE style, right? So like you're never going to get, like, maybe you'll get a grudge match, but you're never going to get what you got in terms of the Texas Death Match from WWE. Like, you're just never going to get that. And I think with the different styles, the harder hitting kind of New Japan style with all the lucha libres that they have, I think what you can do if you're AEW is really lean into what MJF was talking about in his press conference, in that they have so many different styles that they can showcase. And that's what they do over that 4 hours, which is what makes those 4 hours go by quickly, because you have so many different types of matches.
And the fact, this was a lighter card for them. This is 8 matches on the main show. Like, that's a light night for AEW. Like, we always talked about the way they cram everything in. Like, that was something that was like, oh, that's different. But the rest of those matches, like, again, like removing the death match, what's that one match you look at and say, oh, got to put that in match of the year discussion?
That's the only one.
Yeah,
right. That's the only one. MJF and Jay White, because there was so many things moving around in that, and we knew it would be. Like the whole thing of Adam Cole against Jay White, and Adam Cole is injured. You knew that wasn't going to happen. And MJF coming back with the ambulance. Okay, fine. And the whole selling of the knee, which is actually a long-term story, because anytime you see MJF in peril, he's always holding on to the knee. And that came to fruition again in this matchup here against Jay White. But again, fine card. And the action was great. It's just that there's only one match that really stood above and beyond.
Britt Baker, by the way, MVP, even though she wasn't there. Her tweets on Adam Cole throughout the course of the night were spectacular. Yep. She just talking about how he's the reason apparently at home where he doesn't load the dishwasher is because he can't stand for that long. What we're watching is miraculous, folks, because he's standing in the corner. Like, her tweets on the whole thing were fantastic. If you have not seen them, go back, check out her tweets. Because again, it just adds those different layers that the AEW can do.
And again, it's AEW's own doing that we sort of look at this card as like, because there are some collision nights where we get matches that are better than most of the matches on this show. Like some of the Andrade matches or the FTR tag matches that we see on free TV on Saturday nights. We didn't see any of those on Saturday. And maybe that was to give Hangman and Swerve that opportunity to shine. And it shined and it did its part. But like the rest of it, it's just sort of like, all right, it was good.
I'm surprised you're meh on the ladder match. I understand there wasn't a ton of story going into it, but I thought that ladder match delivered. There were some spots that were pretty crazy.
I just feel like we've seen it so much. Like the Brody King stuff was really cool.
Oh.
Yeah.
Like the rest of it, like, we've seen that stuff. And FTR is not made for that type of stuff.
Brody, so out of that match, you know what I learned, Gabe? You know what I learned? I learned I want to see Roosh against Brody King. That's what I learned in watching that show. I want to see that. Like, just give them all the time in the world. Brody King to me is
just
like a future champion.
Just give him the full 2 hours of Collision.
That's fine.
Coming up on Collision, just give him all of Collision. I mean, Roosh might kill Brody Lee by that point, just because it's still real to him. But it's going to be a physical matchup.
I mean, either way, it's 50-50 because Brody King, he took some bumps and gave some bumps too. That's a big guy with a lot of power. And so I think from Broad's standpoint, I know why he might be a little bit down on the match. I think I have an idea. Because it's Big Bill and Ricky Starks as champions. I feel like this is Shawn Michaels Diesel. This is what it feels like to me. Where it's little guy and big guy, and it made this. They don't seem like that they gel, but it works for the story. Where maybe Bill turns on Ricky or vice versa, but ultimately this is about Ricky Starks more so than Big Bill because you cannot put on the marquee Big Bill and think that people are going to buy tickets. That name sucks. Sucks.
Well, that's fair because again, like I compared Orange and Mox to All Out in that match. Like, look at Ricky. Ricky in Chicago. In that strap match with the one-arm Bryan Danielson versus Ricky at this pay-per-view, that's a big step down for Ricky Starks.
In terms of like the match quality, sure, but I mean, it's Bryan Danielson in a strap match. Like I don't know what you were expecting.
One-arm Bryan Danielson, not normal Bryan Danielson.
Yeah, that guy's just, and he's
one-eyed Bryan Danielson coming to your TV soon.
Yeah, is he wrestling on Wednesday nights? Like, is he like we don't know the full field. Yeah, one of the people we do know is a one-eyed Bryan Danielson. Is he kicking off this Continental tournament?
There is a Selection Sunday-esque YouTube show, which no time was announced for it, but I believe that's happening before Dynamite when the actual tournament will start on Dynamite.
Oh man, like if he's wrestling on Wednesday night, like I've got questions about the doctors at AEW. That's all I'm going to say. We move on, though. We dive into the other top 3 stories in the world of professional wrestling. We call it the 3 count, Brian. What do we got at number 1?
All right, we talked about MJF. House of Wrestling reporting this week that several WWE sources believe that MJF has already re-signed with AEW. They believe that deal is through 2027. Does the end of MJF's free agency change his story for you guys?
No, because the only time it's really been mentioned is in he hasn't mentioned it on screen outside of the press conference, right? Like, and it was almost a throwaway when he mentioned, because he sits down and I don't think you get that emotional as he did unless you're sticking around, right? Like, because obviously this place, something meant a lot to you, and AEW clearly means a lot. And then he realized what was going on and quickly said, well, as long as Tony pays me a bunch of money. Like, I'm not shocked by this speculation that he has already re-signed with AEW. I think that makes a ton of sense, especially with him retaining. Look, you could still take the belt off of him in any sort of storyline, or even if he wasn't under contract on the 30th. But with World's End and the last pay-per-view of the year before his contract expires. But I don't think you let him be your 360 be champion for a full year and then see him walk out the door. I think they're pretty confident he's sticking around if he hasn't already signed. And it doesn't change the story. You can just kind of pivot and make him an even longer champion if that's what you want to do. But it hasn't really been a part of the story a ton on screen if you're watching Collision, Dynamite, etc.
Yeah, the crying told me everything I need to know because it was just unusual, the amount of emotion from MJF. He's usually a guy that's ranting and raving and being a heel. Even as a babyface, he could be a smartass. But the way he came across after that match, it was so emotional. And it's kind of like, yeah, that's just weird to me. That sounds like a guy that's going to be staying, and there's maybe a secret handshake deal. Maybe. Again, I know it's been rampant speculation about that, but I think that when you're that emotional and you have that kind of tie and you speak favorably for the company, he said a lot of good things about AEW. He hadn't done that before, so it makes me think that he's going to stay for a while.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, like Gabe, you sort of alluded to. You lose that story of what we envisioned of, the Punk Cena being World's End, being in New York and doing that whole thing. But I think there's still ways to go. I just want to see more of that. Like, I wish the pay-per-view would have ended on Saturday. He gets the win. Him and Cole are standing there, and there's Samoa Joe, and there's Wardlow, and there's Swerve, and there's everyone just sitting there waiting. So you reinforce, like, hey, all these guys are breathing down his neck. He's the most wanted guy. Like, that was another reason the show sort of hurt for me on Saturday, is not progressing that storyline. So as long as they keep telling that story, and they've done a great job at it right now, I'm fine with it. If they get away from it is when I sort of say, like, we sort of dropped the ball right now.
Yeah, and they're going to have to really lean on that storyline, because while he was selling the knee injury, apparently he did pop his hip out or something.
It apparently happened on the elbow drop that wasn't through a table, because that was
which was
a
a dumb spot, which is a dumbass spot. Okay, so the reason why that you don't see table spots in AEW is because they collapse. They're not real tables. You ever see an AEW wrestler stand on the table on Collision? No, because it's a paper table. And that's why I know that, and of course, this announcing staff just shoots all the time. I just think everything's jazz hands and grab ass between Taz and Shivani and Excalibur. And they've made comments before, like, "Hey, I guess no one saw the memo. Hey, no, you don't go around the table. Don't touch the table." Well, that's just dumb to have a table spot, because that table is not the sturdy table that you get sometimes in WWE. So it collapsed. Okay, so you don't do the spot.
Right.
See, you have no table, so you don't do the spot. That's just dumb. That's just dumb. Well, we got to give the audience what they want. We don't have the table, but I still got to drop this elbow. Drop it in the ring. You got this big thing, this square thing with ropes and a mat, and it has DraftKings everywhere. Do it there. It'll be just as impressive.
That's a good spot.
Yeah, because that's when he did it, and obviously it was already a botched spot, and he decided.
And reportedly he won't miss TV time. This maybe won't be wrestling the next few weeks before the pay-per-view.
Which is fine. I mean, we've done that with MJF before. Yeah. Now, since he's been more babyface, he has wrestled more on television. But we've gone stretches without MJF wrestling, and there are so many challengers building up for him. Plus, I mean, other than trying to get something with Samoa Joe, right? Because Joe's now guaranteed. Joe has his spot going forward for an AEW championship match. Like, most of the MJF storyline for the next 5 weeks between now and World's End is going to be devil related anyway, is it not? Of trying to figure out who is behind the devil mask.
I think so.
I'm still mad at the elbow spot. Still mad about it because WWE guys wouldn't do that. When's the last time over the last 5 years someone said, "Oh, the table collapsed, so I can't do that spot"? Well, Kevin Owens is not doing that spot. Others are not doing that. So I don't understand.
And Kevin's a crazy son of a bitch who's jumped off a lot of things in his career.
Yes. And just like all I'm doing is protecting the wrestler in that spot. It's MJF. You're the most important guy in the company because you have the championship. What if it was such a serious injury that December 30th he could not perform?
Right. On Long Island. Like, that's the show you want him there.
Yes. So that just, for a guy that's so professional, that was really indie-rific. Yeah. And he didn't have to do that. He didn't have to do that to prove it to anybody. He could have seriously hurt himself. It's just ridiculous to me.
Well, I says we don't know who's on the other side yet, but on Long Island, it's going to be a hot crowd. Did MJF drop it to end the year?
Drops it to Joe.
To Joe? Yes. Okay.
I'm fine with that. And again, the way they continuously build Joe, I just feel like now's the time to give it to him. It feels like with Samoa Joe. Like, Joe's incredibly hot. Like, he got a good reaction when he came out on Friday night for Collision. Or was it whatever it was? End of Rampage, excuse me. It was the end of Rampage.
Whatever Friday was.
Whatever show on Friday when Samoa Joe came running out to make the save. Collision. And then, I think it was Rampage. I think it was the end of Rampage.
Whatever it was, not a lot of people watched it based on the numbers and SmackDown being up against it.
That was an AEW Collision Friday special. Because there was no Collision on Saturday because of the pay-per-view.
Correct, because they did Collision into Rampage. They did 3 hours on TNT.
That's right. And then they did Battle of the Belts after that, so it was 4 hours.
And they did Ronda Rousey at Ring of Honor. That was all Friday night.
That's also Ring of Honor. So much wrestling for no reason. just ridiculous.
Just hard to keep it all straight. But anyway, my point being, Samoa Joe, world champ at the end of the year.
Let's go.
I think that makes sense. I think December 30th. I know that's kind of be bad for the people on Long Island because this is the only place that MJF is a pure baby face because
Right.
that's his hometown. But I think that's the perfect place to do it. It's unfortunate, guys, that we don't get what we just talked about before, like the Punk goodbye. Hey, my contract's up. I blow a kiss to Vince because he's not in that position at all. He's a baby face. It was the last pay-per-view and the last event for AEW. And again, it's about the war of 2024, but that's not a story right now because of the way he reacted. And if it is true that MJF has signed a deal, then they blew it. They blew the story. If that is, because it was a viable story. What if, right? What if MJF goes to WWE and he does all that? If he signs, it's like, well, you blew it right there in the post show.
Yeah, I was about to say, and that very well could have been the plan for the next 5 weeks. Like that factors in because with MJF, what they've done is they've shown the ability to kind of tell multiple stories around the World Championship with the Devil Mask and Jay White and Samoa Joe and Wardlow and all these different things that kind of fold into that World Championship picture. They could have done Samoa Joe and the Devil, and oh, by the way, Bidding War of 2024. Like they could have done all of those things. They still might try, but if they try to do after his reaction in that presser on Saturday night, if they try to do Bidding War of 2024, it's just going to ring hollow. I think everybody's going to see through it at this point.
And imagine like what that could have been like to end, World's End, where as over as MJF is, Joe being a heel and leaning into that, standing in the ring on Long Island, WCWS, like the trash coming to the ring as he's the world champion. And we're like, hey, is this it? Is this the last time we see MJF? And you keep him off TV for a few months, and then he randomly shows back up. Like that'd be awesome storytelling.
Yeah. And maybe they still try. Is there a way to still do it? Probably. Do I trust that AEW is going to be able to do? They've gotten better. Do I think that they would be able to nuance their way through that? I don't.
I do not. I don't think they can. No, this whole thing ultimately, guys, as we've been talking about, 2024 is going to be interesting anyway when it comes to pro wrestling. But MJF, I think we could check that off as a AEW guy that loses the championship, and now he will be chasing for it. Joe deserves it to me. The whole thing with Jay White was very interesting because Jay, I think, could hold up his end of the bargain. The story was good, but I think that Joe, being the tag team partner of MJF, was just scratching the surface. And now I think that we see the turn from Joe, the knife in the back.
How big of a deal, since we're talking about potential free agents, and now we know that Will Ospreay is no longer a free agent, it kind of seems a pretty big deal if indeed MJF has signed with AEW. Like those were probably the two hottest free agents of 24, both choosing AEW.
Yeah, these are their first real wins on guys that aren't, way past their prime. Like, yes, it's great to have Edge and Christian there and the Hardys and things like that, but those are guys WWE is fine losing. Ospreay and MJF are guys that I'm sure Triple H is wishing he could build around right now. Those are big wins for AEW.
It is, and it's just a bidding war, right? I mean, it's one thing that WWE has a lot of money, sure, but the Khans have a lot of money as well, and also a lighter schedule. That's the other thing too. You don't see Will Ospreay in Des Moines on a Saturday night or a Sunday night. He wants to do that. He'll just be on TV and pay-per-views. He can still live in the UK. That's a key for Will Ospreay to stay. Impact Wrestling, TNA, by the way, said they gave a massive offer to Will Ospreay. And even though Will said, I grew up watching Impact and I respect the wrestlers over the years, you could just tell that the money was just too great from AEW to turn it down.
Do you think that's, and again, this is pure speculation on my point, just kind of thinking out loud, with Endeavor and TKO, does that limit WWE more now than it did in the past of getting into bidding wars? Because it's, again, a pretty polished company, whereas before Vince could be like, yeah, I'll bid for this guy and figure it all out later.
I think that could be, but also, I think that Triple H, especially on the way he's been bringing up NXT people to Raw and SmackDown, I mean, those are the next generation of superstars. He doesn't have to go into the indie well if he doesn't want to, because he's got plenty of wrestlers on that third brand that could be able to be stars if they want to. Not Chase U, but some of those other guys. That's on the company, not that nonsense. Whatever that is.
Like if you follow the UFC at all, you sort of see it where they are of the belief that those three letters are bigger than any individual. Like they can make whoever into a star. So if they take that mindset with WWE, then yeah, they're sort of out on some of those names that could draw big money.
Yeah, well, and the stock has not performed well. I wonder if that has any, if that plays into this at all as well with WWE and who knows how much talks he could have had with WWE because he's still under contract with New Japan, but AEW, New Japan in bed together, so he kind of stays within that family. So maybe he never even got an opportunity to talk with WWE and get an offer on that either.
Let me just plant a seed, guys, and this will be a talking point later on in our show at some point at the end of this year or next year. Hard to book new matches when you don't bring in new talent. We keep asking, who's next for Roman? Who's next for Roman? He's gone through the entire roster. Okay, outside of Gunther, who else is there for Roman? Imagine if you actually had an influx of new stars coming in, not NXT people. I'm talking about from the outside, where it's like, wow, what a big splash to have it. You even beat the Wonderkin, Logan Paul. Roman Reigns already beat him too. So this is what happens when you don't bring in new talent.
But outside of, because again, we just Jade has just completely disappeared off of television. And she's not somebody who is super, I mean, she's raw in terms of her experience in the business as a whole, but she's been wrestling on television. You propped her up and now she's been missing. When's the last time, and now all the rumors seem to be she's going to be on NXT. When's the last time they actually brought in somebody from the wrestling business and put them on Raw or SmackDown right away? Because, I mean, yes,
AJ?
they put Bad Bunny out there. They put Logan Paul out there, but those are bigger names that you're not going to put on NXT. Right. And Logan's just been, is it Dom?
AJ Styles? That was 7 years ago?
Yeah.
So I wonder if that plays a factor in where Will Ospreay's going, oh man, bruv, are they going to put me on NXT, bruv?
Yeah. Oh, that would be deadly. You'd kill everybody there. There'd be nobody left.
That's not good for Braun Breaker.
I mean, seriously. I don't know if it's random, as always, rampant speculation by Meltzer. He said recently, well, they put Jade in the ring in Florida and then the bell rung. Uh-oh.
But did they never watch anything before signing her? Or was it like, oh, she's from AEW. I bet this would be good if we win. Or they just listen to Cody?
That says something, right? Again, it's speculation, but he says, well, because in his mailbag, people ask, well, Jade was on TV. What happened? And all of a sudden she's away. And he said, well, maybe the bell rung. And they saw, she's what I said for a while on this show. 1, 2, 3 kick. 1, 2, 3 side headlock. 1, 2, 3 clothesline. Counting your steps and flexing and looking great, but not the finished product. I kept telling you guys, what's the next gear for her? What's the next gear for her? The WWE style is softer, but you got to be able to be in step with your opponent. And I don't know if that's happening yet as she practices in Florida.
Well, also to your point about them sort of running out of people, we'll talk about Survivor Series in this show. I don't know if we still look at Survivor Series as a major pay-per-view, but no world title is being defended Saturday night.
In Chicago.
Yep.
That's not true. The women's world title is.
I'm saying they're two men's titles. They made a second one so they could actually have a men's title. And it's we're going to throw them in a multi-men match.
Yeah, it's funny that you say the women's title will be defended. That is true.
But even that, just one of the two.
Yeah, because the other one is also involved in the multi-women match that they have going on.
I don't have the official number, guys, but I know all the three of us watch Raw. Do you know that this set a record for amount of women on one show for WWE? Did you notice the ebb and flow of this was primarily women? It was amazing.
Yeah.
It was a lot. I believe at one point it was over 20 I saw tweeted.
24? Something like that. I don't have the real number. It was 24, 25 women on the show, whether it's promo or wrestling. So you saw So Grand Rapids, you saw some history there because I'm sure that you got a ticket because they never tell you what the card is. You go in and you go, Xia Li, Becky Lynch, Charlotte, what's Bailey? Okay, what's going on here? Right? It's wow. So for those that say give women a chance, they had the show Monday. Pretty much.
Well, and I'll tell you what, that the 4-way women's tag match to determine the number one contenders, that really delivered.
Yep.
And kind of gave you a look into, hey, maybe with something with Max. I thought Maxine stole the show. I thought she stepped up and somehow just stole the show. And it made things interesting because you had a lot of talented women in that 8-women tag match.
So Fightful at 10:20 Eastern. So far, 27 women have been featured on tonight's show.
27.
Yep.
You want women? This was it. This is the bridge show, pretty much a go-home show to the pay-per-view. They're like, you know what? You're not going to be on Survivor Series. Here you go.
And like in real spots, like not chasing a 24/7 title. Like actually having actual matches and doing things.
Well, because, Xia Li versus Becky, that obviously meant something. And then the 8 women tag match for the number 1 contendership. And obviously a part of that, you had the tag champions.
Yep.
So you had 10 women around that.
You had Rhea stuff. You had Damage Control come out. Like, it was impressive.
I better not say this. I feel like, hey, Eagles and Chiefs, it's not going to be a good rating. Women, come on out. Here's your chance against the Eagles and the Chiefs. Holy cow. I mean, it's only the best game you can see in the NFL. And they're like, you want a chance? Here you go.
It's been the best Monday night game in a decade.
Right. I should have said that, but that's kind of how I feel. Like, I mean, where's this time been for the women? That I've never seen this much time, and it was great, by the way. I had no complaints.
Yeah, you had a good with Zoe Stark and Shayna Baszler backstage with the, that was a good little vignette promo that they had with Rhea. And again, Rhea's been running Monday Night Raw for the last 2 months. So Rhea's been having her fingerprints all over Monday Night Raw, which has been cool as well. What do we got at number 2, Brian?
All right. Deadline reporting that $7 Productions, as you know, that's run by Dwayne The Rock Johnson, and Vice Studios are producing a docuseries that's, quote, investigating the mysterious demise of WCW. What other wrestling stories do you guys want to see get the documentary treatment?
This is hard. There are a lot of wrestling documentaries out there because you got Peacock producing ones all the time. You have the Dark Side of the Ring. And I'm just trying to think of different wrestling stories that haven't been told at this point that I feel need to be told.
Oh, well, we have a hand raise.
Oh, me. Yes. I have one. The entire McMahon family.
You got that wonderful Vince one on Vice. That wasn't good enough for you?
Oh, you get out of here.
You mean the best of Dark Side of the Ring?
You get out of here with that Scotch tape, putting the segments together, borrowed from all the other shows. Get out of here with that.
I mean, they almost had a permanent in the corner from such and such episode, Dark Side of the Ring, from such and such episode, Dark Side of the Ring. There was zero, there was one original quote in there.
Well, are we getting that Bill Simmons one? Is that one ever going to see the light of day?
No.
Okay.
No. Somehow, some way that will go right back to the NBA.
Okay.
So no, I don't know how, but somehow he'll attach it to the Celtics of '86. So no, I don't need that. No, what I'm telling you is that I said the entire Vince McMahon family. I'm talking about. I want to know about his wife. I want to know about Shane. I want to know about Stephanie. That's what I want.
What about his dad? Start all the way back there.
I mean, that's for old guys like me. I'd like to see what the old man was like. Yes, I'd love to know what the old man was like and with his Bruno Sammartino and Bob Backlund as his champion. I'd love to see that, but I need to know more about the old lady. I want to know about Vince's wife. I want to know about that whole dynamic, the 4 of them. Vince, okay, we got that story, but what about the wife? How's she feeling that Vince has been outside the marriage for a long time, apparently, allegedly?
So the Vince thing I wrote down is the end of Vince. What it was like as he's getting pushed out and then coming back in and then getting pushed back out.
I mean, knowing the family dynamic, I think would be wild, and we're never going to get that story, right? Because you would need one of the 3 to sit down. Actually, I mean, and honestly, if you wanted the full picture, you would need all 3 of Linda, Shane, and Stephanie to sit down. I could see Shane doing it. I can't see Linda and Stephanie doing it.
With Linda, I mean, she's been on the outs for a long time. I mean, also she's been in the White House.
Well, yeah. So after her political career, because WWE, presumably went to PG to try to help her out and make her more of an attractive candidate to get elected. Once her political career failed, if she didn't step up and start blabbing stories out there, I don't think she's ever going to be doing it.
That's what I want, though. And Stephanie's shunned from the company. I mean, in and out of the company like that. And Shane, how about you talk, Shane?
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about being pushed out.
I think Shane would talk in a heartbeat. I think you start asking questions for Shane he'll see the camera. He'll just start answering. He does, he'll just start answering.
If we got Triple H and Stephanie divorced, would Triple H do with one then? Because then Shane would do that. You get him in
allegedly.
that way.
Allegedly. Yes, that's how.
So you get half of them that way.
What if the devil mask is Shane McMahon? What if Shane is the devil in AEW? That's what.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
That'd be different.
It'd be shocking.
Uh-huh.
I'm sorry, like all I can think of Shane now is blowing out his quad at WrestleMania now.
Yes,
That's all I can think of. Like, like the rise and fall of Shane McMahon is also just wild from a wrestling perspective.
Yeah.
Like going away for so long, coming back. Like when he initially came back, the night they gave away that award, and they were going to give it to Stephanie or whatever, or Stephanie was going to give it to Vince, and all of a sudden here comes the money hit. Like that was a legitimate surprise and a huge pop. Such a huge pop. And everybody was excited for Shane. And then Shane overstayed his welcome with the Best in the World tournament and that whole thing. And then he tried to secretly come back behind the scenes, messed up the Royal Rumble, where Randy Orton's laughing at him backstage. Then he stays along. And like the pop that he got at Mania last year, everyone's like, ooh, I'm curious. And then he comes out and just blows his quad and Snoop Dogg has to save the day. Like, what are we doing?
I like to know more about that from Shane, like all of it, man. I think that'd be great. Also, you know what? We haven't heard enough, I think, in a really deep dive on the Montreal Screwjob. We should really find out more about that, what happened with Brett and Sean. I feel incomplete. I think we need more on that story.
Do you think that's impossible because Sean is still too ingrained in WWE?
No, I'm effing with you. Like we've heard so much of it. No, I'm effing with you. No,
okay.
I mean we've heard way too much about that document.
I was about to say, like, if you want to get deeper, like if you want the real truth from Sean, he's got to get removed from WWE.
No,
because that's
down.
Like the problem with a lot of these stories is they get WWE-atized, like which
right.
I'm curious about WCW, this WCW thing they're working on. It's still obviously because it's $7 and it's Dwayne and he's obviously WWE guy, but like as good as the Monday Night Wars and some of the other WWE produced material that's been on the WWE network, like there's still some parts, some holes in that storytelling that WWE doesn't want to tell because like they're telling it from the winner's perspective. I'm hoping we get some outside of WWE perspective, and that's how this thing can separate itself. But a lot of the stories that have been told just kind of get WWE-ified. Like I don't know if we've actually talked about it here with the Kurt Angle documentary and how they kind of mess with the timeline a little bit, where his current wife wasn't there as he was going through a lot of the bad stuff that he was going through when he was with TNA, and there's a huge TNA hole in the story. Mostly good for a documentary, but it's not the complete look because it gets WWE-atized.
Well, that's the thing with the WCW story. Like, I'm curious to see, like, what else is there? Like, the mysterious demise. Like, they spent a lot of money. They got beat by Vince Russo and David Arquette happened. Like, what else is there? I think they can have fun with it. Like, I read the Death of WCW book. Is one of my favorite books where it just goes through, like, week by week of, like, those final few years and just the plot holes and just the awful booking. So if it's like that could be fun. But I'm wondering what else there is to tell. But obviously, if, Dwayne's involved, then he wants to see something out of it also.
Yeah, I mean, for someone who's watching WCW back then, when I was they weren't podcasts, they were radio shows on Monday nights when Raw took on Nitro. I mean, I could tell you about the death of WCW. It was just that, Eric Bischoff was inept. Right. And if you want to know about the death of WCW, listen to his podcast, 83 Weeks, because there's a guy there was in charge of the company, but would find a side office and never be in Gorilla. He would always just hide in the office, right? And of course, any fault with WCW, it never felt with him. There's a guy here that never takes blame. Takes blame for the bad creative, ever.
And that's the other thing, right? Like, so you mentioned his podcast, 83 Weeks. Like, now you're not getting a neutral story. You're getting from Eric Bischoff's side, and he's not taking the responsibility that probably needs to be taken in that instance.
Yeah, what happened is that Mike Tyson was taking on Shawn Michaels, actually taking on Stone Cold Steve Austin. They were face to face, and Nitro never recovered. And while you had Mike Tyson and you had Stone Cold Steve Austin against Shawn Michaels and Mr. McMahon becoming the biggest heel in the business, on the other end, you've got the finger poke of doom, Hogan against Nash in front of 45,000 people at the Georgia Dome, a whole schmaz where Hogan just pokes Nash. Nash falls down 1, 2, 3, and for the 45,000 people, to me, that was the end of the company right there. Now they'll say, "Oh, well, Time Warner wanted to have more of a kid-friendly show, while WWE was raunchy and all that." No, the booking was horrendous, and Vince Russo's part of that as well. So it just, to me, I'll watch, but there's nothing that they can tell me I don't already know about both companies during that era.
The other story I wrote down sort of outside the WWE bubble is Brawl Out. Like, if somehow there's video of what happened backstage and Larry the dog's involved and people are biting and there's muffins, and just actually hearing from those guys what actually happened.
CM Punk had some extra muffins. He's just like throwing them. Like,
you never know.
Hiding behind chairs and just lobbing muffins like grenades. Like, what are we doing?
Like, literally, if there was no dogs allowed in the workplace, CM Punk probably still works there and we're all good.
I'll tell you what, from an attendance standpoint, let AEW keep going in this direction. Rock can start writing that documentary in about 5 years or less. if this company don't get hot, I'm just telling you, like, I don't care what TV deal they have, because you got to think about the next TV deal. And hopefully that's there for AEW, because I think wrestling's better when you have multiple companies to watch. But this company's got to get hot. Got to get hot at some point.
Yep.
Yeah, you got to make yourself out. I think, again, I go back to actually spending money on your product in terms of advertising in the cities that you're in, because when they put on these pay-per-views in big-time wrestling cities, the A cities, talking about LA, Chicago, like, the crowds are hot and the crowds are great, but it's when you're going to some of these cities for Collision and Dynamite, and maybe the city doesn't even know you're there.
Right.
Like, I have no idea where Dynamite is on Wednesday. No idea.
Next Wednesday, like after Chicago, I'm not sure. I saw.
Oh yeah, that's right, because they're in Chicago. Yes, because they're always in Chicago the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Yeah, but after that, like, I don't know where Collision is this week.
No, I don't either.
And because they don't do a good enough job of promoting where they're going to be.
There used to be like a minute or two. WWE used to do this all the time, where they would just have like this plane going through, and it's like, here's WWE when we come to your area, Norfolk, Virginia, at the Scope, and we're going to be in Fort Lauderdale at the, and all that stuff. They would give you like a minute and tell you, hey, tickets are available. Here's where we're going to be. There's a lower third there, but it's within the show, and it's so fast, and it's kind of like, okay, so that's a thing that AEW has to understand. And it's a long conversation, but I'll make it short. AEW has to understand that you're not the WWE. The WWE is the Ice Capades. They're the Harlem Globetrotters. You could just say, hey, we're going to be in town. Oh, I'm going to get a ticket. AEW has to prove from a card standpoint, hey, we're coming to town, and here's what you got to see. You have to sell the wrestlers. You're not a big enough brand to say AEW's coming to Denver. AEW's coming to Denver? Who's wrestling? I don't know. I'll skip it. I'll watch it on TV.
But they don't know. We've seen the way they manage the roster. Like, hey, come watch Andrade wrestle. Maybe. Like, they don't know who's wrestling. They can't figure it out week to week.
Well, you gotta get that to be a viable company. You cannot be the WWE, because they have years and years of experience at this. For you have to sell the wrestlers. You can sell the wrestling, but you can sell the action. And so this is why they are really struggling at the gate in a lot of these cities.
Yep.
What do we got at number 3?
Saturday night from Chicago on Peacock. It is the 2023 version of the Survivor Series. What will be the biggest story to come out of this year's Survivor Series?
I'm debating if it's coming out of the men's side or the women's side of War Games. I'm guessing the men's side ends up being the main event.
Yeah.
But I haven't figured out who is turning on who. If anybody in the men's side, we're on the women's side. I think Bayley's going to cost that side War Games, and she's getting kicked out of her own group. And because she sees it coming.
Right.
Like, she started off Friday Night SmackDown thinking she was getting the boot from Damage Control. It's coming. Like, Bayley's getting the boot, and I think that's going to be a big story coming out of Saturday night.
Well, you talk about unique things in wrestling. The three of us think we've seen everything. You ever seen the Asian group? Like Asuka, Io Sky, and Kairi Sane? Like, that's whoa. Like, Dakota Kai's part of that as well, but Dakota Kai pretend like she understands Japanese as well. Did you notice?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
Bailey, this is what she said. Like, how do you know, New Zealander? How do you know what she said? like, do you speak Japanese?
By proximity, she's closer to Japan from New Zealand, so
Yes.
ipso facto, she knows and can translate.
I love that because that's the most you like unique things in wrestling, right? That's unique. Yep. Like, okay, and they're all three of them are badass. Like, who takes the pinfall out of those three? I mean, that's a tough one. Usually someone's got to be Jannetty. Oh, those three? I'm not sure who that is in these three because those are badasses.
Well, that's how we know we're going to win because you look at that whole match, and that's why Shotzi's there.
That's right. Which one of these things is not like the other? Shotzi Blackheart. That's a push right there, brother. That's a push. Like, oh, she's in there? Oh, that's odd. Yeah. Just so we're clear, what I say wrong?
I'm just thinking of Shotzi and how confused I was when she ran. Like when they first started building this team, and Bianca's out there, and Shotzi comes running out. Like, okay,
you got a wrong sign. Like, don't steal third. You're supposed to stay on second. I don't know what happened there.
I had this, and I wasn't waving you. Okay, I guess it's almost like she accidentally ended up there, like, she's out there on TV now, and nothing we can do. I guess she's going to be in War Games.
So you're not going to put anything in your hair, huh? You're not going to, okay. All right, just dark hair and spiky. All right, here we go. We're doing with Shotzi. Well, someone's got to take the pinfall, right?
Right.
Well, and that's Bailey. There you go. That's Bailey. Bailey's going to take the pinfall.
It's either Bailey or Shotzi on the
other
side.
It's one of the two.
Right?
It's one of the two.
Just so I'm clear, because I think you said this earlier, bro. It's 5 matches.
5 matches. So both War Games matches. Gunther defends against Miz. Rhea defends against Zoe Stark, and then we have Carlito versus Santos Escobar.
Okay, the reason why I asked is because the War Games match, the 2 War Games matches, they're gonna go an hour apiece, or what?
Yeah,
probably. Yeah, I feel like they do it like Money in the Bank, open and close. Unless Gunther go an hour and Miz ends the run.
Boy,
that is.
Would you say it ends the run? Is that what you just said? That's what he get past us.
That's what he just suggested.
Oh,
I never thought.
God.
I didn't think I'd hear the day where Brian would even jokingly mention that. With the
it's WWE. I don't put anything past them.
Boy, I tell you, nothing like a good solid left hand by Miz on Gunther. Boy, he got him, boy. Oh, you got him now, Miz. You got me believing.
And you got the crowd behind you by chanting USA.
You want to talk about burying your opponent? Like we thought what Cena did by putting Austin Theory in a body bag before WrestleMania. Holy cow! What Gunther did on Monday.
I love the fact that Gunther just has a really nice belly laugh out there. Just like, are you serious with this guy? Oh, hello, Mike. And I know that pisses Miz off. He doesn't like that. I'm the Miz. Like, hey, Mike, so you're just like the people out here on the other side of the rail, right? I mean, you're part of wrestling I did not watch when you were champion. So, yeah, we're going to wrestle, right? Hey, Mike, you're just Mike Mizanin. Oh, the whole name.
Little Mike Mizanin.
Little Mike Mizanin.
Little, I mean, as opposed to Big Bronson Reed, we now have Little Mike Mizanin.
Oh, God. This is such a stretch. I can understand this is 2004 and you're struggling to try to figure out what you want to do in the WWE when it was really going through a transition. But you're really going to sell this in 2023. Miz as a baby face. God bless you, Michael Cole. He was doing God's work on commentary right there. Come on, Miz, for all of us weirdos. Oh, no. It's just so the biggest story. Is it the biggest story that Randy Orton is going to come back and what Randy Orton is going to look like? Isn't that not the biggest story? Like, and they did it right, by the way. Let me just say this very quickly.
You think they did that right?
Yes, they did. That's old school wrestling. Here's how they did it. The old school wrestling is that it's 3-on-2. Who's going to be your tag partner? Who's going to tag with you? None other than Randy Orton. Now, the old WWE under Vince here is Randy Orton coming down the ramp in Grand Rapids, and he RKOs everybody and spoils everything. Now, when you see him this time, now you have to tune in. That's different for WWE. It's old school. We're going to have Randy Orton. He'll be there in Chicago. Don't worry about it. And when we see him, it's like, wow, we haven't seen Randy in a long time, and he looks good. Instead of him RKOing everybody on a meaningless Raw. That's smart booking right there. That's old school wrestling.
I don't think he needed to RKO everyone, but Randy's been gone so long.
That's right.
To not hear his music
No.
was weird to me.
No.
That was very weird.
You got to pay for it, pal. You want to see Randy Orton? You got to pay for it. That's old school right there.
But all that was saying, hey, it's not CM Punk. Like, that's all it was.
100%. That was, this didn't fit into Randy's schedule, but we have to get this out here because we don't need the Allstate Arena chanting CM Punk for 3 hours.
And the thing I didn't like is the way Cody sort of leaned in. Like, Cody never said his name, which, like, still sort of left it open. But then looking at 11:53 p.m. Eastern last night,
they tweeted
WWE tweets it out, hey, it's Randy Orton. So, like, why didn't Cody say that?
Well, he gave all the hints. I mean, come on. He gave you breadcrumbs. He gave you Apex.
Well, why not say the name then if they're just going to put it out there anyway? Tickets still on sale, by the way.
They opened up some seats, they told us.
Okay.
Sure about that in Chicago? They opened up some seats? Huh. I don't know what that means. They open it. So is it behind the big board? Those
shrink the board a little bit.
No, that's old school. They say it's Randy Orton. Okay, so we're gonna see him. I can't wait to see what he looks like because of everything that we all read about his back. I'm like, how viable will he be? How good, how smooth will he be? Will he look like the old Randy? I have no idea.
This is an interesting match to come back from a back injury as well.
Yep. Yep. Sounds like that. You know what? Let me call it now. He will be attacked in the back, and he's going to be there to save it at the end for the last 4 minutes because he can't go probably more than 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah, that's a good way to protect him. Like, he doesn't have to be in there that long.
Yeah,
but like storyline wise, like what actually comes out of this?
Again, that's where I'm not sure on the men's side. But on the women's side, Bailey getting kicked out of, and then that Asian. I don't know if there's still going to be damage control, but the badass group of Asuka, Kairi Sane, and Io Sky just running SmackDown. Yeah, sign me up for that.
Yeah, the women's side, I think there's great stories there. The IC title, the women's world title, like those are essentially just matches. Carlitos and Escobar should be good, but the men's side just feels like there's no story that comes out of it.
Whatever the story still remains. Like, okay, so I can make a case for Drew McIntyre. Great promo to open up Raw, by the way, Grand Rapids. Great job by him to set the tone by saying, I'm not a heel, or pretty much, I've always been the same. But keep in mind that guy, Jey Uso, cost me the opportunity for a championship. And so it's really the heel's lament, right? I feel like I'm right. I know that you're a babyface crowd, but I'm the same guy. And by the way, you can still be a fan of mine, but if you're not, screw off, because those guys, the Usos, and that group, the Bloodline, stopped me from being a champion. So he has every right to feel that way. Also drew a line in the sand and says, I'm not with Judgment Day. And again, because he's not aligned with Jey Uso and Rollins and Zayn, fans are going to boo Drew McIntyre. We've been seeing this coming for a while, so good storytelling there to be able to see there's a little bit of extra on Drew McIntyre, a little bit extra cheese on his Whopper.
Do we see the Bloodline get involved somehow in this storyline? Because now we see Cody Rhodes insert himself back in last week on SmackDown into Bloodline business with LA Knight. So do we see the Bloodline try to interfere and screw Jay and Cody?
You mean like Paul and Roman? You mean like Paul and Roman?
No, I'm talking about Roman's not going to be there. No. I'm talking about Solo.
Well, I would say, what about the other title? Like, what if someone on the face side turns on Rollins and then you set up his next feud? Jay, Orton, Sammy.
If somebody turns on Rollins and lays him out, and Priest then isn't champion coming out of Chicago, like, what are we doing? Like, if somebody turns out, like, Damien's right there.
Yes.
If you got Rollins laid out, man, there's going to be a ref right there. Cash that sumbitch in.
He'll forget it in the little cage he has to stand in beforehand, so he'll have to go out there and get it. It'll be locked. He'll forget it in his keys. Like, WWE logic.
What do you mean, what little cage? It's not an elimination chamber.
No, they usually on the ramp. They stay in their little pod.
Oh, for God's sakes.
They did specifically say that they are going to be in those little shark cages.
Yeah,
they did say that last night on Raw.
Okay, so just to flip it, then that I like the way you're thinking. Maybe not on the babyface side, but I mean, you beat down Rollins enough where the rest of the team leaves. You beat like a Balor or a JD McDonough or McIntyre beats down Rollins enough for Priest to cash in.
Yeah,
maybe
that works.
I mean,
We're
that's
talking
fine.
about that after if that happens. If there's a
Sure.
new champ.
Otherwise, pretty weak. They give us crap. Gunther, Miz, Rhea Ripley, Zoe Stark. I love that the face to face with Zoe Stark. Zoe Stark had a good promo, but it's still not believable. Hey, Maud, you're not beating Rhea Ripley. Right. You don't look like a champion. Like, it sounds good, but is anyone behind Zoe Stark? Is like, how many great singles matches has she had to be able to get this? See what I mean? You're just piecing it together because that's all you got left.
This is a filler pay-per-view. They're just trying to get to January at this point.
In Chicago, but it'll be sold out. It'll be fine. But just, I feel like there should be more than those other two big War Games matches, but we're not getting that.
I mean, maybe they said so. I mean, you got to have something for LA Knight, right? Like, you just got to throw something on this pay-per-view.
Oh, that's right. LA Knight's on. That's right. LA Knight's on that on this card. Why do you think that is, Gabe?
I don't know.
Can't give him a singles match at all. I mean,
that's what I'm saying. Like,
in the company?
There's with only 5 matches, there's space to throw him versus somebody on there. Just throw it on there Friday night.
But that's like going to be Theory or Waller. Like, it's just
it's something, man. This company is laying back in the lawn chair. They're just like, yep, just throw it out there. See you.
Get us to Rumble. Yeah, get us to Rumble.
I mean, God almighty. I mean, other companies can't afford to be that. They can't just put all their stars in just a couple of matches and just be like, Chicago will be there. They always show up. What the hell? Doesn't matter. Really? LA Knight is like one of your big merch sellers. You can't get them on the card?
One of these days, Hood, your city's not going to show up. I don't know what day that is, but one of these days. Because, like, they keep getting taken advantage of. Like, they had All Out after All In a week later. Super hot crowd. Everybody shows up. Everybody's there. You're getting this craptastic, like, Survivor Series used to be a tentpole event, and now you're just kind of getting this thrown together. They decided to make it War Games to make it seem bigger, even though it's not. And yet Chicago's going to show up.
You're getting Gunther and Miz. Chicago's showing up for Gunther and Miz. Babyface Miz.
That should be the first match, by the way. Get that out of the way.
That's the main event.
Yeah.
After War Games.
I believe they're trying to bullshit us and think that
y'all are showing up too, and you guys are just gladly showing up.
As long as there's probably we'll show up.
Man,
that's the way it is.
What do we got in news and notes this week, Brian?
All right. Speaking of Gunther, in an interview with Under the Ring, he said, quote, "You never really know what you get with Brock. It's definitely a match I want to have and I want to do. I feel like Brock is somebody. I just make it my thing. I make him my personal end boss."
Yeah, sign me up.
Yeah,
I'm into that. I'm down for Brock versus Gunther.
No title on the line. Just put those two in the ring.
Yeah, put them in the ring.
Don't put that out there.
No title. I don't need a title. No, because I don't want him to lose to Brock. No, I just want to see those two big guys go at it. This will be the apex of Gunther's career if he took on Brock.
Yep.
I mean, it'd be easy to set up. It'd be as if you actually had Keith Lee go up against Brock Lesnar after they faced off in the Royal Rumble. You do a similar thing, and Brock gets eliminated by Gunther, and boom, there you go. There's your match setup.
Works for me.
Go from there.
Say Keith Lee coming out there.
Well, don't you remember when
Rumble?
Brock? You remember the Rumble when Brock, as champion, put the title on the line because he had beaten everybody, and then Keith Lee comes out and Brock Lesnar like, "Ooh, big boy!" Yeah,
I remember that. I do remember that.
Like that, and that was an electric again. Like, and the crowd got super behind it, and then Vince did nothing with it.
Right. That's right. I remember that. That's when Keith Lee's hair was dark. Then he went to AEW and his hair was gray, and now it's being back to dark again. That's right.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Thank you. This has been This Week in Keith Lee's hairline / hair color.
Some contract news. Fightful reports that Ronda Rousey currently on a handshake deal with AEW and Ring of Honor. She worked a tag match at the Ring of Honor tapings on Friday. They're hoping it drives up Honor Club subscriptions.
It seems like she doesn't want to sign like a full-time deal, but she wants to. Look, her and Marina Shafir are tight. She wants to do some stuff with Marina.
Ugh.
Good for her.
They did her and Marina versus Athena and Billy Starks was the Ring of Honor match, and they also worked Revolver, I believe, the past weekend as well.
That is correct. And boy, here's someone from the WWE who couldn't get out quick enough, right? Gets out of the company, slips out of the company, and now she ends up on Ring of Honor on a TV taping where all of a sudden the internet melts down like, oh my God, Ronda's in AEW. It's like, that's what you want to do? Really? I mean, whatever you think. Look, the three of us were done with Ronda Rousey. I think after a while it was Ronda Rousey fatigue. I get that.
The problem is, like, the best thing that she did, I mean, she started off great.
Yeah.
Started off great. But, like, one of the best things she ever did was her last feud with Shayna on the way out.
Yes.
Like, that's
great
that's
promo.
the problem.
Great promo. She did the honors. Didn't do anything for Baszler, by the way, because she's still flat.
Right.
Yeah, correct. I mean, she tried. She tried to help out her pal.
You know.
And apparently there were chants on Friday of like, we want Ronda, and the other half of the crowd going, no, we don't. So I don't know if people are going to Honor Club to see Ronda Rousey matches right now.
Well, that's money. If you got a little scenery reaction, that's fine. Hey, AEW people, some don't even want WWE people in there. I get that. And we saw Ronda Rousey, and Gabe is right. Out of all the debuts I've seen, it's one of the best I've ever seen.
Yep.
I mean, and this is the beginning of newbies coming into WWE and being able to work smooth, right? Because we talked so much about Logan Paul and what we saw from Bad Bunny, but I thought that tag team match, Ronda was fantastic. But then you put her in a singles bout, and the bell rang, and she wasn't getting over at all. It did not translate to the audience. It was this hybrid, weird MMA wrestling thing, and they want her to be the next Roddy Piper, and that did not work at all.
Well, they have a pay-per-view in a few weeks. Like, if it's her versus Athena, are you excited about that?
I am not, because Athena will eat her lunch. If you pardon the expression.
But I think if you let Ronda just be a badass heel who kicks your ass and actually don't have the, most dangerous woman in the world be just a moniker, like let her be that, there's value in her. Yeah. There's value there. If you can find the right thing. Just
get away from Marina Shafir. Yeah. That's death.
No, she's got great feet. Just ask Mox.
Never understood that quote. That's the worst quote of the year. Never understood that. Didn't get it. Didn't understand it. Nope.
It's Mox, though. Some injury news. We mentioned earlier, Wrestling Purist says MJF dislocated his hip on that elbow drop, not expected to miss any TV time. And Fightful reporting that Juice Robinson has a back injury that will require surgery. No timetable for his return, but it's not expected to be a, quote, extremely drawn-out absence.
Which would make sense of how he was written off TV on Friday night. Again, whether it was Collision or Rampage doesn't matter, but he was written off with the attack backstage, which would make sense if he has a legitimate back injury, and maybe we don't see Bullet Club Gold here for a little bit. Maybe they just kind of fade to the background and make their presence known a little bit later once he becomes healthy.
Well, it's a hot act too. Juice Robinson actually is the glue to hold all that together. He really is, because he's wild. He's out of his mind, and it's perfect, right? I mean, the left hand, of God, boom, punching people and stuff, and just his antics on the mic. I mean, he's the guy that has actually made the Bucks look good. I'm sorry, the Guns. Yeah. So I mean, hopefully all the best to him, because that all ties together with him being the wild man.
And finally, in news and notes announced today, our very own Jonathan Hood joining SiriusXM Busted Open every Sunday moving forward, 9 a.m. to noon with Justin LeBar.
Yeah, let's go. Attaboy, Jay Hood.
Yes, very excited about it.
So how does this work? Are you going to test out your best takes on this show, and then the ones that really hit, then you take them to SiriusXM? That's we're kind of like the place where you test all that stuff out on.
Yes, I would never do that. Yes, absolutely. I would never do that. It's a great opportunity. And as I was telling you guys, it's a great, I think, opportunity for me to be able to let everyone else know about Good Karma Wrestling. We're coming up on 100 episodes, and the idea now that I'll be able to do this on a lot of Sundays, on SiriusXM channel 156 And it's been a legacy station, a channel with wrestling, with Dave LaGreca. I'm just appreciative of the opportunity. But the thing is that I'll always have GKW in mind because I want our listeners and our viewers to come over on Sundays. And so GKW is everywhere. It's not only on this show, but also now on Sirius XM. So long time coming, but I'm not going anywhere. For those that hate me, I'm still here. I will be leaving this show. So you can dislike me or like me here, and also on Sirius XM with Justin LaBar from Wrestling Inc. So Maiden Voyage starts on Sunday, 8 to 11 Central, 9 to noon Eastern. We'll be talking about Survivor Series, but again, 2 shows, not 1 show, 2 shows. Looking forward to it.
Boom.
What did you guys have as your matches of the week? Well, okay. I mean, we all just have to give 2, right? Because
Yes.
number 1, Texas Death Match. Number 1, we've talked about it. It was spectacular.
A lot of staples.
A lot of staples, yes, a lot. As a matter of fact, some where Swerve used it on himself, just to see if there was any more staples left. Just put it in his chest, and
haven't we all?
No, we have not.
Whomst among us hasn't just taken a staple gun and stapled ourselves in the chest?
And he hit a gusher, by the way, guys. He hit a gusher.
My poor wife falling asleep on the couch, waking up, and that was the first image she saw. That she went to bed after that one.
I mean, it could have been worse. The first image she saw could have been Hangman Adam Page underneath, trying to guzzle the blood coming off of Swerve Strickland.
I mean, and by the way, I know some of the internet wrestling community was not happy about that, whatever. But I want to give Los Angeles some credit. I don't know if you guys saw this. I saw this on Saturday and Sunday. The IWC and a slash through it. I don't know if you saw that in the crowd.
No.
And I saw that a number of signs like that, like some anti-internet wrestling community people pissed off about it. Like, screw you, I'm enjoying wrestling because this is what I like. And I like that. I appreciate that. That was cool.
Yeah.
Xia Li against Becky Lynch was the best match on Raw because those two had some time for me. Becky Lynch gave a lot to Xia Li. Here's the thing about this, about marketing, right? You can't say that. What did Michael Cole say about Xia Li, like the unbeatable or remarkable or whatever it is, right? Well, she's not unbeatable because she lost against Becky Lynch.
And guess what?
She's commercials about NXT and her challenging for the title.
Yeah, she's going to be losing back to that night. I don't know how to break it to Michael, but Zaya's going to wake up on Wednesday 0-2 for the week.
Yeah. And I know you guys have some, so I'll just keep it simple with Claudio against Buddy Murphy in 0 Hour before the pay-per-view, which was tremendous on and not surprising, right? It's Claudio, it's Buddy Murphy. Yeah, that's going to be just fine. So those are 2 in particular amongst the 9 or 10 I have listed on my sheet here.
I'll throw in a couple other WWE ones. Dragon Lee and Axiom from Friday. I don't know what they're doing with Dragon Lee, but they just sort of let him work, and he delivers on Friday night, so that's always cool. And
don't know what they're doing with Axiom either. Just like, hey, couple Lucha Libres, just go do your thing.
And then the Monday night match I had, Gargano versus Kaiser. Like, it's a weird concept, but when you give Johnny Gargano a bunch of time to wrestle, we had a good wrestling match. Very weird.
You didn't mind the little outside interference, little distraction finish?
It was minor enough that they had enough time before that. I was good with it.
The Monday night match I had, I really liked Shinsuke Nakamura and Chad Gable, because again, Chad Gable is just he's the workhorse of Monday Night Raw. Turns out you give Chad Gable time in the ring with just about anyone, and Chad Gable does cool stuff. And it's the same thing with Shin. And I know there's rumors that the WWE is potentially interested. That's why they're kind of showing, hey, look, we will showcase the former New Japan Pro Wrestling guys that we have. But the work that Shin's been putting in has been spectacular. He's teasing about whoever his next opponent is, and I thought that was really good. There. And I mentioned it before, but I love the ladder match. I was a big fan of the ladder match on Saturday night. I thought there were some really cool spots.
Matches. I feel like this is unprecedented.
There's a lot of wrestling out there.
Maybe because we're taping on Tuesday, it's fresher in our brains, and I feel like we've never had 3 different Raw matches.
It's all because of the women. And by the way, that's just amazing what happened. So I thought that was tremendous, that the women had a chance to be able to show what they can do. I'm sure the rating will be just fine, even against the Eagles and Chiefs.
Like, and again, going back to the 4-way women's tag match to be the number one contenders for the women's title, like, I feel like each group had a different, like, honestly, just because I know what Indy Hartwell and Candice LeRae can do, like, I'm excited for them. And Tegan Knox getting the rub, and her and Natalia are now the number one contenders. And then what they had, again, with Maxine working with Alpha Academy and her getting more and more opportunities to showcase what she can do in the ring. Like, I honestly thought she was going to win it when she had the suplex pinning combination. Like, I thought that was going to be it, and I thought that they were going to give it to her right then and there. Like, she was really good in that match as well.
Yep.
Guys, happy Thanksgiving to you and your family. And of course, all of our viewers and listeners, happy Thanksgiving to you and yours. We're thankful that you're with us every week here on GKW.
Yep.
Absolutely. And again, check us out. We'll be back at our regular time Thursday, 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern next week. But don't forget, if you're looking for instant reaction, check out our guy, Jay Hood. He'll be on Sirius XM's Busted Open Radio Sunday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Central Time. If you're looking for that quick reaction from Jay Hood right after Survivor Series on Saturday, we will talk to you again next week right here on GK.